Hi there, I'm Rick Partlow. Welcome back to How to Write Science Fiction That Doesn't Suck. Today I want to talk with you about collaborations. Now, there's a lot of upsides and downsides to collaborating with other writers. I'm not going to go into the financial upsides and downsides of it because this isn't really a show about the financial side of writing. It's more about the craft. So I'm going to talk about the different ways of collaboration and whether they're right for you, whether they are conducive to you writing better or not, or worse. I've done a lot of collaborations at this point in my career. Some of them have been successful, some of them have been not, but I think they've all been pretty good. But let's go into the different types of them because there's a lot of different kinds of collaborations. The one most people think of when they hear the word collaboration, if they're at all familiar with writing, is when you have two writers probably close to the same level of expertise and success who they share the duties of writing the narrative somehow. They split it up. You can split it up by point of view character, where one writer writes one point of view character, one writes the other. You can split it up by chapter, by scene. There's a lot of different ways you can split that up. I've tried that. That is the one I've had the least success with. And when I read a book where that's done, it's rare case where I enjoy it. And the reason for that is it feels to me like the voice of the narrative alters significantly when you go from one writer to the other. And there's very few writers who work well enough together to be able to avoid that. A lot of times, like with Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle, they work together so frequently and practice so well at their craft and at meshing their voices together that you couldn't really tell the voices apart anymore. And that's the ideal. That's if you're writing with somebody else, that's what you want to do. So that is like the classic collaboration most writers think of when they hear the term who haven't done it yet. But it's not by any means the only one, and probably not even the most common one anymore. Then you get the kind of collaboration where one person writes the outline, a very, very detailed outline, pretty much writes the story, but without just the skeleton of the story, without the flesh and organs hanging off of where, the dialogue, the actual narrative, they write just what happens, and then the other person fleshes that out. I have done that. I've done that. Two different writers now. It's been published. One with Pacey Holden with the Space Hunter series. It's hard to remember all these series. And another one that hasn't come out yet, but will be coming out soon with Ralph Kern, called the Pirate Wars series. I wrote the idea for the book. I wrote an outline for the book. I went over that outline with the writer, and then the writer was responsible for, writing the actual narrative. I've done the other side of that with the trilogy I did with Drew Avery, Mech Force. Originally it was called Broken Arrow Mercenary Force until it was relaunched by Aethon. But in that case, Drew Avery had the idea for Mech Force and wanted the books written, but he could not write fast enough, and his job constraints were keeping him from completing them. And he asked me if I would do it. And at the time, I was able to write 5,000 words a day. So I was writing 2 different novels, 2,000 words each. And I told him, well, you give me a detailed outline. And I specify a very detailed outline. And I will write 1,000 words a day and finish these books, when I finish them. I can't promise it's going to be fast, but I'll write 1,000 words a day in it. And we did the 3 book, the trilogy. And as I said, Drew was very busy. So his outlines were a little on the short side, which was why those books were 50 to 70,000 words long each. They weren't long books. If I had been outlining them myself, I might have made them a little bit longer, but I thought that they're very entertaining, that the idea behind them was good. It's interesting characters. And it was a little bit, it didn't have the financial success some of the others have had, mostly not because of the story, but because it was a kind of a different genre than I usually write. It was more a near future, post-apocalyptic, genetic engineering type thriller than it was the military science fiction I usually write. So that was a little bit different. And then you have another kind of collaboration. And this kind of collaboration is more a publisher. And the most famous instance of this would be the James Patterson books. James Patterson, in case you didn't know, and I hate to burst your bubble, he doesn't write those books. The books that come out so often, the airport books, he doesn't write those. He gets with a writer and says, I want an idea from you on this type of genre book. That writer gives him an idea. Patterson talks to that writer about the idea, what they want in it, what kind of book it should be, basic plot points, and then that writer writes the book. That writer came up with the idea for the book, and that writer writes the book. Patterson, he approves it. He may smooth it out. He may add something to it. He may take something out. But he's not writing the book, and he's not plotting the book. He's the publisher, basically. He's giving you the chance at success because James Patterson books sell. He's not actual publisher, but he's really your publisher. He's the one. He's your editor, your publisher. He's the one that has the final say on things, and you're writing the book. To some extent, the books that I write with Jeff Chaney are that way. Jeff comes to writers and says, I'd like you to write a series with me. And he says, you're really good at this genre, or this genre, and I'd like you to pitch me a plot. And you give him a plot, and he sits down and gets on the phone with you and works, okay, this part of the plot would be better if you did this. The main character would be better if it was this kind of main character. And he's basically trying to have you write a book that has the ingredients to be the most successful, to be appealed the most to his audience, the people who read the books with his name on them. And you give him a outline for, an arc for the first few books in the series. You give him the outline for the first book. Then you give him like the first chapter, and he looks through them and he approves them or wants changes. And that's how it goes. He's not actually coming up with the plot, and he's not writing the book, but he has the final approval, and he makes suggestions, and he guides you through what he thinks the most successful and appealing book would be. So that's a different kind of collaboration. I mean, his name is on the book because A, he had to approve all this, and B, he's the publisher, and he's marketing this book to his ready-made audience who will buy any of the books that he puts out with other people. So that's another kind of collaboration, basically being a publisher, and you're collaborating in that you are approving the plot, you are adding nuances to it, you're trying to get it to sell the best it can and appeal to a certain audience. Those are the different types I've done. There's others out there. I have not experienced those others, but some people, like I said, split the book up into chapters and handle it that way. I did try to do that once. I did about half a book with another writer before we decided that it just wasn't going anywhere. And this was in the pre-self-publishing, pre-indie publishing days. So we would have had to pitch it to a publisher or an agent, and it just seemed like the plot really wasn't going anywhere. So we dropped that idea. I've also had a fantasy novel that almost got off the ground that me and another writer were going to split points of view. He was going to take one character and I was going to take another. It was going to be a third-person point of view book, but, a limited, close third limited, where it's basically from a certain character's point of view, and he was going to take one of the main characters and I would take the other. And that didn't work out because he got busy with his full-time job and he didn't do it. And then he got a contract for a cyberpunk series, so it never really worked out. I'm kind of regret that because I would have liked to have tried that. But it's going to be up to you which of these you find the most appealing. If I'm being honest, I prefer the type where one person writes the outline, a really detailed outline. Like, say it's going to be a 100,000 word book. The outline should be maybe 12 to 15,000 words. And then the other person takes that, reads it, sticks to it, adds their own flourishes, and voila, you got a book. If you are the more successful financially of the two authors, you're likely to be the one who writes that outline, whereas the other person is going to write the actual words. It's not always the case, but usually. So it's a good way for somebody who's not yet got a lot of exposure to get exposure as an author by connecting their story to connecting their writing to somebody who has a bigger audience. So if you are just trying to get started, now you're not going to, unless you really capture their attention by like short story in an anthology or something like that, you're not going to get someone like John Ringo or Larry Correia or David Weber to offer you that deal. I mean, David Weber has done a lot of collaborations with different authors, but those are authors who are already successful and who he trusts their work ethic and their artistic sense. So that's not something that most people are going to have the chance to do. But there will be authors out there who are more successful than you, who are not like hyper huge names like Ringo or Weber or Correia, who have ideas they don't have time to write, and they want somebody who is a diligent writer with a good voice to write their idea out. And that is a chance for you to get a start. It's a chance for you to see how the sausage is made when it comes to them outlining their books, and coming up with ideas. And you'll probably wind up spending a lot of time talking to them, either in person or via Zoom or on the phone, just to, have your ideas meshed together. So it's an opportunity to not just get exposure, but to learn some of the craft, learn some of the business end of it. So I highly recommend that kind of collaboration. Now, I will tell you that when you go into that kind of collaboration, your best bet is to leave your ego at the door. Because what it comes right down to is you're writing a novel that is an idea but from someone else in someone else's world, and they are already more successful than you. So if they tell you they want something changed, then you change it. If you have a really good argument as to why it shouldn't be, you make that argument once, and if they accept that, that's great. But if they don't keep arguing. Don't get bitter, don't get resentful. They're giving you an opportunity. So don't keep like busting their butt over a change they want to make that you're like, this is my baby. No, it's their baby. They wrote the outline. It's their book. You do what they want. On the other side of that coin, if you are the more successful author, which most people watching this aren't going to be, if you're successful, you don't need me to tell you how to write a science fiction book that doesn't suck. It's not to say you're not good, but you probably don't have the financial success yet, or you would be pretty much convinced you knew how to write one that doesn't suck because you have proof of it, because you sold the book. But if you are the person who's the more successful at some point and you're having somebody else collaborate with you by you writing the outline, don't be a dick about that either. If they have an idea that's different from your outline, don't be so enamored of your own ideas that you won't listen to them, because they're going to be writing this. They're going to be the one who has to deal with the flow of the action and the dialogue, and maybe they have a concern that something you put in is going to interrupt that flow. So you don't necessarily just give in to what they want automatically, but listen. Don't be like, oh, I'm the more successful author. I'm doing you a favor, so you just shut up and do what I want. No, don't do that. You can always learn from other people, no matter how much success you have. So don't be a know-it-all. Don't lord it over them. They're also doing you a favor, because this is usually a series of books that you want to get written that wouldn't get written because you don't have the time to do it. So both sides of that coin. If you're dealing with someone either from the position of more power or less power, be nice. Leave your ego out of it. The success of the book is both artistically and financially, is the most important thing. If you are collaborating in a way where you're sharing the book, where you're like, one person's writing one part, one person's writing another, it's also important that you don't let your ego override artistic and to some extent financial concerns. You want this book to be successful, which means you want it to be the best written it can be, and you want it to appeal to the audience. So if the other person says, hey, I don't think what I wrote meshes in well with what you wrote in this one spot, we need to change it, then you need to say, okay, what can I do to change my part that makes it better, instead of automatically looking at theirs. And it's the same principle. It's strange to say this, because it would seem being an author is a thing that very much involves your own ego. But really, if you want to be a financially successful author, there's not a lot of room for ego in this game. You need to leave your ego at the door. You need to worry about what's going to make the book successful, not what will make it superior in your own opinion. Now, I mean, at some point, if you do well enough, you're going to be at the position where people just take your word for what's going to be successful. But that's quite a long journey to get to, and I'm certainly not there yet. And I make a living on this, and I'm not there yet. So that is my opinion about collaborations. I think they're very rewarding. I think if you have the chance to do one with somebody who's more experienced and more financially successful, you should take it. If at all possible, if you're not hamstrung by your day job. I think if you wind up being somebody who is more successful, that it gives you an opportunity to expand upon. As an author, I don't know about you, but I just have loads and loads of ideas that I'm never going to have the time to write. If I won like that Mega Millions lottery and won like $1 billion, I think one of the main things I would do is sit down and write the stuff that I've always wanted to write and never had time for, because I've got to write the stuff that I know is going to sell. So this is a chance for you to have that stuff written, to get it out there. Even if you didn't write the whole thing, it's a chance to read the book that you wanted to write in the first place. So I highly recommend looking into collaborations. Now, one thing that's not on the business end, but it's a warning from the artistic end as well, is do not collaborate with somebody unless you are sure of their work ethic. Their work ethic is much more important than their artistic ability. You can work with them in the artistic ability. It may cause you more work. Maybe you have to go back and smooth some things out. But if somebody is not writing your book, if they're not getting the words on the page at the pace they said they were going to when you started this out, then you have to consider whether you want to keep writing with them. It doesn't have to be their fault. It doesn't have to be they're a bad person. But maybe they have a day job that just keeps them away from writing. And you need to know that beforehand. Before you trust them to write your idea, you need to know, yes, I'm going to write 2,000 words a day in this or 3,000 words a day in this. I'm going to get this done in a month and a half. If they say that, then they need to do it. And if it stretches into like a year and they're still not done, maybe you need to think about going with somebody else. Maybe they're just the kind of writer that's slower. Maybe you can live with that. That's up to you. But it's my opinion that you should set a timeline before you start the book and hold them to that. And also, it's probably a good idea if you're the senior writer in this collaboration to get a sense of where the plot's going as it goes there. Because it's a lot easier if you spot something that you don't like to say it a third of the way into the book than it is 2/3 of the way into the book. Because one way, maybe it takes them 2 or 3 weeks to rewrite that. You do it the other way, it could take months. So keep your eye on it as the project goes along. And if, like me, you're doing this for a living, that's going to be hard because you've got other stuff to do. You got your own writing to do. But it's something, if you're going to put your name on a book, you need to keep watch on the progress of the book and make sure that nothing happens that's uncorrectable. You don't let it go too far where you're pretty much stuck with the way things are. And that's the last thing, is both of your names are going to be on this book. Unless they're ghostwriting for you or you're ghostwriting for them, which I know nothing about ghostwriting, so I can't tell you anything. But if you're collaborating in whatever capacity, whether it be as someone who writes the outline, someone who writes just the narrative, sharing the different points of view, or with someone who's basically a publisher who's approving and guiding your choices, both your names are going to be on this book. So from whichever end of this you're at, you need to make sure that what gets put out is something you're proud of, and in a purely financial sense, something that will not hamstring your brand, because you are a brand. Your name is a brand. And if you write something or allow something to be written with your name on it that is subpar, that's going to stick with you. People are going to read that, and the next time they see your name, they're not going to want to buy your book. So whichever end of it you are, whichever part of the power spectrum, think very hard about whether you want to put your name on this book. If you're one that's on the lower end of the power spectrum and you're being helped out by somebody who's a better writer, if at the end they do something that makes you just say, I don't want my name on this book, then don't put your name in the book. Say, hey, I'm going to use a different pen name for this novel, this series. Be nice about it. Don't argue with them if they're the one who are doing you a favor. Just say, oh, my other pen name, I'm going to be concentrating on a different genre. So I want to do this pen name for this series. They'll understand. For the most part, they will understand that. Just be very careful about what you put your name on. Make sure it reflects your sensibilities, your voice, and that you will not be ashamed or regretting later having put your name on that work. All right. That's it for now. I will see you guys next time. And if you want to get in touch with me, it's dutyhonorplanet487 @gmail.com.